the political and economic spheres. So how do you read the outcome?
One of the major issues discussed, first, Kenya is an important country in East Africa, and the East African Federation, they are now pursuing the integration of East African countries. And one of the issues discussed is the Somalia situation, and because Kenya is suffering from attacks by Al-Shabaab of Somalia, they infiltrated Kenyan territories and exploded many bombs, which resulted in many deaths and injuries among the Kenyan nationals. So there is good consultation between the two sides on the Somali issues. Also, the two countries consulted each other about situation in South Sudan, because there is also deteriorating situation in South Sudan, and those countries have an interest to have a stable South Sudan, including North Sudan, of course. And also, the foreign minister delivered a very important statement to the Governing Council of UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Program, on climate change, because Egypt will chair the African group in the climate change conference, which is a very important issue now in the international community. And this is a post which was held by former President of Ethiopia, Meles Zenawi. So Egypt is trying to have a common African stand in the negotiation of the Africa in the climate change negotiations.
Away from the climate change negotiations, Egypt also is trying to gain the African support for the non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for the years 2016-2017. Do you believe that the African states, and in particular Kenya, which was the discussion that topped the talks between the foreign minister of Egypt and the officials there, that they could also support Egypt in its bid to gain the non-permanent seat of the UN Security Council?
This is a preliminary step to make Kenya agree to Egypt being a candidate of the African group, because in New York, the African group will vote to present a one-unified candidate, and most prospects will have the support of many African members of the African unions in order to support Egypt candidacy. And once there is a unified candidate, the whole international community agrees to select Egypt as member of the Security Council.
One of the main topics that was discussed also during the foreign minister's visit to Kenya was terrorism, and how the African states should unite in order to face the increasing terrorism in the world in general and in Africa in particular, taking into consideration that Egypt is suffering from the repercussions of the terrorism, and Kenya as well is suffering from that. So how do you read this?
I think the two countries are suffering from the same terrorist attack. I think consultation and cooperation among security agencies, police, and the political arena is very important to coordinate their stand against Kenya, because terrorism is not only try to destabilize those countries, but also is a hindrance for tourism. Two countries are very important source of their international product is through tourism. And many Egyptians go to Kenya for vacation, and many Kenyans are coming to Egypt for tourist purposes. So we have to concentrate on anti-terrorist method. Africa, we did not know terrorist attacks per se till 10-15 years ago, till there was the attack against the American embassy in Nairobi, and also the attacks by Shabab in Somalia against Kenyan interests, which is does not differentiate between the army, police, and civilians.
Away from the terrorist threats, the delegation of which was accompanying the Foreign Minister of Egypt included about 50 businessmen.
Yeah.
So how do you read the participation of about 50 businessmen in the Egyptian King Business Forum, which was held in Nairobi? And how do you see the economic relations between both countries, and how can we increase the level of trade and investment cooperation between both countries?
As I mentioned before, both countries are members of COMESA and members of the trade free zone established by COMESA. It is COMESA included 2 countries, 12 of them established this free trade zone. So Egyptian products to Kenya are exempted from any custom duties or any administrative barriers, and the same as Kenyan products to Egypt. So there is a lot of possibilities for the private sector in Egypt. I hope that the private sector will be more bold in investing in Kenya and in other COMESA countries. They have done so in Cameroon, they have done so in Ethiopia. So there are a lot of scope for that.
Mr. Ambassador, do you believe that the Egyptian participation and the Egyptian economic role in Africa, especially talking about the private sector, is enough? I believe that the African continent is very rich in natural resources, very virgin. It has very good opportunities for work, for investment, for trade. Yet I believe they are not very well used, and Egypt is not using that in a very aggressive way, I believe. How do we?
We have to be very aggressive, and with due respect to the governments are cumbersome in their investment opportunities. So the private sector is more suitable for investment in Africa, and this is as proven in the last decade by the private sector in Egypt. Also another aspect where the private sector since we are going to face some water problems in the future, so it is very important to invest in the agriculture sector in Kenya and Uganda and other places where we can save a lot of water, since we are importing a lot of agriculture products, not only from Africa but from the outside world.
Mr. Ambassador, also a very important topic which was discussed during the visit by the Foreign Minister of Egypt to Kenya was the Renaissance Dam, and how Egypt should not be harmed from this dam, which could be representing a real threat for our shares from the Nile water. So how do you read that, and how Kenya could help Egypt in order to protect its shares?
Although Kenya is not one of the tributaries of the Nile River, but it is on the Lake Victoria, the source of the White Nile, which is one of the tributaries bringing some water to Egypt. And the Foreign Minister of Kenya said that her country appreciates the need of Egypt not to have its share of the Nile waters being decreased, because Kenya also, they suffer from another Ethiopian dam which is being built on the Omo River, which supplies the Turkana lake with water, and they have a shortage of water in this lake, which led to a lot of displaced persons, of people living around this lake. So we have a share to be apprehensive of some of the dams, but now we are entering in some fruitful discussion with Ethiopia in order to guarantee that our share of the Nile water will not be decreasing.
And we have heard recently the Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation and the Foreign Minister saying that also the amount of water which should be kept in the reservoir of the dam should be revised in order not to harm our shares. So from your point of view, how the Ethiopian side would tackle this issue, and we believe that we could reach actually a mutual understanding regarding that issue?
If Ethiopia decides to fill the lake behind the Renaissance Dam in 1 year, Egypt will not have one drop of
which is
catastrophic, not only Egypt but Sudan. So the negotiations now is to arrange that Kenya will fill the dam gradually over 6 or 7 years, which will lessen the water share of Egypt, but on a gradual basis. Ethiopia claimed that the purpose of building this dam is to generate electricity, which we do agree, but and would not use it for agricultural purposes. So the negotiation now in how long the Ethiopian side will take to fill the dam. We told them a smaller dam will generate you the same electricity without invading on Egypt's share of water.
Up to this moment, we did not see any positive outcome regarding the meetings of the Tripartite Committee concerning the Renaissance Dam. How do you see that? And unfortunately, we have not gained much time since the construction of the dam is taking place, and nothing much is happening on the ground. So how do you read that?
You are completely correct. And even the 3 countries have not agreed yet about the consulting platform, which will make a report about the advantages and disadvantages of the dam and how it will affect the share of Egypt and Sudan of this water.
Mr. Ambassador, how do you see now the Egyptian approach regarding Africa? We have seen after visiting Kenya, Ambassador Sameh Shoukry did travel to Morocco and met with the King of Morocco there. So how do you read his visit to many African countries, of course taking into consideration that Morocco is an Arab and African state?
Egypt and Morocco used to have very good relations and still, and the only country in Africa and the Arab world where the joint commission is between the 2 countries chaired by the heads of state, the only country. So there are some spoilers who would like to so we'll, especially among the press, which are some of them have bad intention and some do that by mistake or neglect. And that's why I think the visit of the foreign minister was successful. He met the king, and President Sisi invited the king to visit Egypt and vice versa. And
it delivered the clear message that the Egyptian-Moroccan relations are in a very good...
I visited Morocco several times. The people of Morocco adore Egypt as we adore the Egyptian Morocco.
Indeed, and it will always remain a brotherly relation between Egypt and Morocco. Mr. Ambassador Ahmed Hagag, the former Secretary General of the African Society and former Egyptian Ambassador to Kenya in the 80s, thank you very much, sir, for your precious input, and thank you for being with us on Nile TV International. And with that, we come, our dear viewers, to the end of this edition from Africa Today. Hope you have enjoyed it. Until we meet again next week, I'm Ahmed signing off.